A group of investigators steps into the charred ruins of a burned-down building, searching for clues. The air is thick with smoke and the stench of burnt flesh. Scattered across the floor are lifeless bodies. There remains a grim testament to the horror that took place. Among the wreckage, a blood-stained message is smeared across the wall. Jovan. The name is infamous, tied to a series of deadly attacks across the city. A signature left behind by a terrorist who ensures no survivors, burning entire buildings to the ground. In the next scene, Kamen Rebecca wakes up, groggy and disoriented, her wrists bound in cold steel cuffs. The harsh light above flickers as she looks around the unfamiliar room. Panic sets in. Where am I? What happened? She demands. Across from her, Detective Moon remains unfazed, her piercing gaze locked onto Rebecca. I think it's time you start answering my questions. Confused and frightened, Rebecca insists she doesn't know what's happening. She instinctively reaches for her pocket, but the detective smirks, holding up a small bottle of pills. Looking for this? Moon leans in, her voice steady and firm. You were found passed out in your car at 2 a.m., she states. If you don't start talking, I can promise you, you're facing real time in jail. Rebecca's breathing grows unsteady. Desperate for a moment to think, she asks to use the bathroom. Once inside, she stares at her reflection, noticing dried stains on her clothes. She has no recollection of how they got there. A voice calls her name from the other side of the door. She hesitates before opening it. Detective Avery stands in the hallway, holding a box of donuts. Renovation's going on, he says casually, handing her one. There's something unsettling about his calm demeanor. Back in the interrogation room, the detectives present security footage of a man named Robert Audrey being questioned. The sight of him sends a jolt through Rebecca's mind, stirring fragmented memories. She remembers the bar, she remembers locking eyes with him, feeling the pull of attraction. She bought him a drink, they flirted, the night blurred into laughter and whispers. She recalls stepping outside, stumbling into her car, the scent of alcohol heavy in the air. Robert's testimony, however, paints a different picture. He claims she insisted on driving him home, despite being intoxicated. That drive ended in a violent crash near the train tracks. Rebecca shakes her head, disbelief settling in. I wasn't drunk. He must have drugged me. Her voice wavers. She insists she feels fine and asks if there's a fine she can pay to leave. The response is cold and immediate. You hit someone with your car. The weight of the accusation presses down on her. The next thing she knows, she is being escorted to a holding cell. Her friend Sarah walks into the office, requesting to meet her. She leans in, whispering a chilling warning. You need to run. You're in danger. Before Rebecca can respond, Sarah disappears down the hallway. The detectives bring her into the interrogation room and inform her that they discovered the dead body of a cyclist at the location where she was found. She immediately demands to speak to her lawyer. Shortly after, a young man named Isaac Barcy arrives, claiming that her lawyer, Mrs. Rosenberg, is away on a family vacation, so he is stepping in to assist with her case. Back in the interrogation room, the detectives present gruesome crime scene photos, stained with blood. In response, Isaac insists on conducting a DNA test on the blood samples. They escort Rebecca back to her cell, where a sickly-looking man in the cell stares at Rebecca with an unsettling grin. His presence is suffocating, his muttered threats growing more aggressive. Then, without warning, he lunges at another woman, pinning her against the wall. The chaos draws the attention of the detective. She rushes in, but the man overpowers her, seizing her gun. The situation spirals. The detective struggles, pinned against the wall. Her desperate eyes lock onto Rebecca. Shoot him, she pleads. Rebecca grabs the gun, hands trembling. She pulls the trigger. A deafening shot echoes through the air. Silence follows. But when she looks, horror floods her face. The detective slumps to the ground, blood pooling beneath her. She missed. The door bursts open, and Avery steps inside. He sees Rebecca standing over the fallen detective, gun in hand. What did you do? Dragged back into the interrogation room, Rebecca faces Avery's cold stare. He doesn't listen to her protests. He demands answers. Panic takes over. She pleads, desperate to make it all go away. I'll pay you $1 million. He pauses. The offer lingers in the air before he counters. 1.2, a final agreement is made. $1.5 million. Rebecca's led into another room where a laptop is placed in front of her. 1 minute, Avery warns, stepping away as she prepares to make the transfer. The room is eerily quiet. Rebecca glances around. Something isn't right. Her eyes land on an open locker. Inside, a fake police badge. Her pulse quickens. She checks the nearby desk. The phones and computers aren't even connected. Realization hits. This isn't a police station. Her breath catches as she grips the laptop. Avery and the so-called lawyer return. In one swift motion, she seizes his gun, aiming straight at him. Avery remains composed, his expression unreadable. He steps closer, speaking calmly. Rebecca pulls the trigger. Nothing. The gun. As Audrey Barcy rushes in, taser in hand. The world around her blurs, fading to black. The group gathers, realizing they've been exposed. With no other option, they shift to Plan B. It's now clear. Everyone in the so-called prison has been working together all along. Inside the interrogation room, they finally reveal their faces to Rebecca. Avery steps forward, his expression cold and unforgiving. He tells her about Denton, his close friend who died in a fire accident. Rebecca had an affair with Denton, and Avery blames her for his death. But what he really wants is the $8 million Denton had. Rebecca, shaken but composed, recounts her side of the story. Dalton had come to her in distress, claiming he had been conned by someone who doesn't leave loose ends. Fearing for his life, he gave her a key and warned her that he was in grave danger. The next day, Denton and his staff died in a fire accident. When she went to investigate, she found only $2 million. The rest was gone. Doubt spreads through the room. The less experienced members start to panic, whispering about a name they've only heard in rumors. Jovan, a ruthless killer. Fear tightens its grip on them. Rebecca seizes the moment and accuses Avery of being Jovan, manipulating them all. Unfazed, Avery orders Sully to start Rebecca's punishment. Sully and his partner bring out a crude set of torture tools, but just as Sully moves in, he suddenly freezes. His hands tremble, and the blade slips from his grasp, shattering on the floor. He demands a drug to numb himself, claiming he can't perform the torture sober. Avery hands him something, warning him not to take too much. As Avery leads the others to his office, Audrey pulls him aside. He suggests a different approach. He'll earn Rebecca's trust and manipulate her into transferring the money. Avery agrees and gives him a bottle of pills to help him gain her confidence. Audrey returns to Rebecca, attempting to charm her. He reminds her of when they met at the bar, but Rebecca sees through him. She warns him. Avery could be Jovan. If he is, he'll kill you once this is over. But she requested to use the restroom as she needs to pee, she whispers. Audrey ignores her warning. Then Audrey goes to Avery and demands the key from him, allowing Rebecca to use the restroom. Once inside, she fakes a coughing fit. As Audrey turns to get her water, she empties the bottle of pills into the coffee pot. Then she heads for the window, attempting an escape. Audrey catches her and orders her to get down. Desperate, she grabs a sharp object and holds it to his throat, using him as a human shield. Avery emerges, gun in hand. Drop the gun, or he dies. Avery doesn't hesitate. He shoots Audrey in the leg. Defenseless, Rebecca surrenders. But as she raises her hands, she subtly splits Audrey's wound open further. Blood pours out. The group gathers, watching in horror as Audrey bleeds out. Sully pretends to help, but instead cuts off the belt, tying Audrey's wound, letting him bleed to death. The others look on, terrified. Back in the interrogation room, Rebecca makes her next move. She tells the others Avery is Jovan, trying to turn them against him. Enraged, Avery slaps her across the face. He hands Sully the tools and orders him to torture her. Before he can begin, Sully drinks his coffee and suddenly he starts choking and collapses, dead. Panic spreads through the group. The team drags the Sully's body away and Jess began to torture Rebecca. Pulling off one finger at a time, the Rebecca turns to Avery. Then, "You poisoned Sully's coffee, didn't you?" Avery's eyes narrow. Furious, he stabs Rebecca's hand and orders her to be taken away. Now, the group moves to a new plan. They bring in Sarah, Rebecca's friend. Avery points a gun at her head and demands Rebecca transfer the money, or Sarah dies. But Rebecca barely reacts. "I barely even know her." Realizing this tactic won't work, they lock Sarah away. Jess and Barcy get into a struggle about a gun. Barcy overpowers her, slamming her head against the table. She dies instantly. Then, Avery brings in a baby. "This child belongs to you, doesn't it? Dalton's son. The child you gave up for adoption. Sarah adopted him, that's why you befriended her." Avery proposes a deal. He'll raise the child himself. Rebecca refuses. Without hesitation, Avery fires at the baby. Rebecca screams in agony, only to realize it was a decoy, a baby doll with a hidden mobile phone. Just then, Moon enters, carrying the real baby. Everything becomes clear. Rebecca is the child's biological mother. With no choice, she agrees to transfer the money. As the computer is brought in, she asks, "Where's Jess?" Fear flickers across Avery's face. He confesses he killed her by accident, but now he's done with all of this. He just wants the baby. Avery refuses. Barcy turns on him, aiming his gun. Then, Moon turns on Barcy, ordering him to drop his weapon. Before anyone can react, Sarah struggles against her bindings. In the chaos, Avery attacks Barcy, smashing his head against the wall repeatedly, killing him instantly. Moon, now furious, points her gun at Avery. She turns to Rebecca. Does the offer still stand? It's obvious. Rebecca and Moon had a secret deal all along. Rebecca begins the transfer, but Avery lunges at Moon and they fight viciously. Rebecca struggles against her cuffs. Avery overpowers Moon, choking her to death. Wounded and weak, he stumbles toward Rebecca, gun in hand. "Transfer the money, now!" Rebecca smirks. "I poisoned Sully's coffee. I played you from the start. After you shot Audrey, I cut his wound open wider to make sure he bled out. You never had control over me." Avery, furious, pulls the trigger, but the gun is empty. Rebecca pulls out the real gun and empties it into him until he collapses. She turns to the baby, finally at peace. Then, Sarah steps forward, still alive. I called the police. I told them everything. Rebecca hugs her and then shoots her dead. She walks up to Avery, half dead, barely breathing. My name is Jovan. She douses the entire building in gasoline and sets it on fire. As flames engulf the room, Avery, with his last breath, drags his fingers through his own blood and writes one word on the wall, Jovan. Rebecca gets into her car and drives away. If you enjoyed this recap, please subscribe to our channel.